Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast, or if you're with us on YouTube, hello and welcome. So I'm really excited today. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is reading. One of my highest values is learning, and I'm such a believer that I am an eternal student. I can constantly learn. And it's funny because I remember reading about this piece of neuroplasticity and the fact that our brain can continue to learn, where for years we thought, from 16 or 18, that was it. Our brain had no more capacity. Absolutely not true. And I spend my life learning. So what I want to really bring to you guys is a little bit of my learning from each of the books that I read. Now, the books that I read are generally around personal development. They're around professional development. They're often in the business space. So if you're keen and, you don't necessarily have time to read all of the books, and I actually do a lot of listening now. One of my favorite podcasts in the world is Audible. Yes, they might be a sponsor one day. Let me manifest that one. But yeah, I love the reading. I love the learning, and every opportunity I get, I like to kind of dig into something. I used to be really fortunate when I worked as a sales rep, because I was driving for something like 20 hours a week. So it gave me a really great opportunity to do lots of listening to books and podcasts. Unfortunately, I don't have 20 hours a week anymore, but I really kind of dig into my listening when I can. I had a client recently, she was about an hour and a half or 2 hours drive away. So I got a really good chunk of 4 hours of listening to a book, which was great. So today I'm going to share with you the book called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. I love this book. I recommend it to everyone. I've just had a really great conversation with my clients, because one of the modules, if you like, in the coaching program that I teach is around consistency. And I think that this book falls really well into that model of consistency, because if you can figure out who you need on your team, you can really build in the consistency that's needed in order to keep bringing sales in consistently. So it's not necessarily you that needs to do it. You don't have to figure out how you can make your sales calls every day, how you can do all your follow-ups, how you can have all your one-on-one calls. You need to figure out who do you need on your team. And it might not be, in the early stages, it might not be you, who might not be someone in the sales space. It might actually just be someone in the admin space, so that you have more time to do the sales. And of course, as a sales coach, I'm such a believer that for you as a business owner, you should learn how to sell first and foremost. Learn how to sell, get comfortable with selling, do it in a way that feels really authentic to you. Because if you don't, your business stagnates. Your business doesn't move forward. All those beautiful big dreams that you have don't end up coming to fruition, because we're so scared and so nervous about being in that sales space. So my first and foremost is, as a business owner, get really comfortable in the selling space, however you want to do that. And then once you know how to sell and you know how to bring people into the business, you know how to funnel them through the business, then you have this opportunity to hire someone. You can give them some experience and say, listen, this is what I did and this is what worked for me. Maybe you can go and try this. All right, off topic. So let's get back into Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. So a couple of the areas, we're just going to kind of follow through the flow of the book. So he talks about, and even as I say this, I feel really terrible, because, this is a pretty cool thing about Dan Sullivan's book, is that he didn't actually write it. He found a who to write it. So clever, because he knew he had really great content, but he didn't want to be the one to sit down and to write the book. So he found, and I want to make sure I give you the right author, person who... Dr. Benjamin Hardy. So Dr. Benjamin Hardy actually wrote the book for Dan Sullivan, and he was just as passionate about Dan's work as Dan is. And they were really a great combination for each other, because Dr. Benjamin could really bring all of Dan's content and vision to life in the book. And I think it's such a true testament to practicing what you preach. He wanted to write the book. He put it out there. I think he might have spoken, he talks about it in the book, he might have spoken to a few people about it. And all of a sudden, Benjamin Hardy came along and said, I would love to do this for you. So pretty cool. All right. So the topics, I guess, the areas that we cover, there's the freedom of time, there's freedom of money, there's freedom of relationship, and there's freedom of purpose. So remember, the overarching ideas around this book are that as a business owner, we don't want to figure out how are we going to do it. We want to figure out who do we need on our team, who can help us to bring our vision to life, to share our purpose with more people. Because the truth is, if we stay stuck as a business owner trying to wear all of the hats and trying to figure it out ourselves, we actually stifle our creativity. We stifle our ability to really grow and expand. So that's why I think this book is just so pivotal for anyone in their business journey. And it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're just starting out or whether you're at that, multi-million dollar phases. And I literally had a conversation with one of my multi-million dollar clients yesterday, and it's around this of who's the next who do we need? What's that next piece in the puzzle in order to take your business to the next level? So we're going to talk about the freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship, and freedom of purpose. So the freedom of time is really understanding that who's create abundance and self-expansion. And I guess my take on this was, when you have someone who can take the tasks off your hands that you don't necessarily do well or you don't like doing, it creates that abundance for yourself, that abundance of time, and time allows for that self-expansion. So to give you an example of that one of the things that I managed to find was that for me, cleaning my house would take me about 5 hours a week. By the time I tidied everything up, and granted, in the tidying, I would decide that I needed to fold some things over here and put some things away over there rather than just doing the cleaning. So it was taking me 5 hours. That's a lot of time. So in finding a cleaner to help me, in 2 hours, they could get all of that done. And the funny thing is, I actually clean before I tidy, before they come. But my tidying phase now is about half an hour. I'm like, quick, get everything away so they can come in and make sure that everything's clean. And what that does for me is frees up about 4.5 hours. So I'm still spending half an hour tidying, but frees up about 4.5 hours of my time. Now I get to decide what I do with that time. I get to decide if that's time that I spend with my family, with my kids, or whether it's time that I put into my business, into activities in my business. And for me, I chose to do a half and half, because at the end of the day, I still have to keep paying those cleaners. So I want to make sure I'm doing activities that are going to, at the very least, cover those costs, if not even more. And what I've figured out is that pretty much for every hour that I'm in my business, I'm making about 4 times what I would be paying them. So for me, it was a really important place to make sure that I was then conscious of what I'm doing with that 5 hours every week. But I also wanted to make sure that I was spending some more time with my kiddos. So I do things like painting and playing Pluto and Jenga and going to lots of sporting events, all the fun things. I think what comes with the freedom of time, and he really talks about this in the book, is that it's the procrastination. And this is really interesting for me, because I know I procrastinate, and I know I'm a procrastinator. And for a long time, I would label myself as a procrastinator in a bad way. But what this book helped me to realize is that procrastination is when you're putting off something that you don't want to do. And if you don't want to do it, it's a really good indication that you need to find someone else to do it for you. Right? So it's a really good indication that whatever that thing that you're procrastinating on is something that you might need to get rid of. So for me in the business, I started to have a think about what are the things that I was procrastinating on. And number one for me was social media. I was absolutely procrastinating on posting anything. I wasn't doing anything on social media when I first started my business, or even in that first 6 months in business. Nothing on social media, because it gave me a bit of social media anxiety. And I think because, I don't know, I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't like it, whatever it was. And so unfortunately, in that first 6 months, I would keep beating myself up. And tell me somewhere, in the comments, I say in the comments, we're not doing live. So, leave me a comment, leave me a review, let me know. Or, put your hand up if you've ever said this, that I should be posting more. I should do this or I should do that. Well, the truth is, if there's something that you should be doing and you're procrastinating on it, now's the time to find someone else to do it for you. There's a reason why you're not doing it. It's maybe not your jam, or maybe you've got a block around it. But if it's something that you really care about and you're passionate about and can help to get you some results, we've got to figure out who do we need to be able to take that next step for us. So for me, the first step in my business was hiring someone who could help me with that social media. So hiring someone who could help me to load the social media, to help me with the content creation, to help me with making it look pretty, all of those pieces that I just knew I was putting off. So I think it's a really different way of thinking about procrastination. If there's something you're procrastinating on, it's probably something that you don't enjoy doing. It's not your jam. So now might be the right time to find someone to help you do that. He also talks in this space about finding who's for all aspects of your life. And I think this is really important and kind of comes back to my story in the beginning about my cleaners. Was I recognized that in those early stages, those early days of my business, I couldn't actually afford to have someone come into the business and help me out in business space. But I recognized that the cleaning was something that I could absolutely justify spending the money on. And it freed up all of that time for me. So my question for you is, what are some of the areas in your life outside of just the business that you might be able to find a who you might be able to delegate to that will free up some of your time? So it could be laundry, it could be cleaning, it could be lawn mowing, it could be cleaning the pool, it could be washing the dog, whatever it might be, if it takes you however long to wash the dog. It could even be thinking about, little spaces of time saving. So, going to do the groceries, or I'm always doing this thinking about how we can do things faster. So the groceries might be online, or the washing might be being done at a laundromat, whatever that might be. So that freedom of time, I guess, it's just really helping you to understand that when you find a who, you can really expand you really have that self-expansion and that abundance of time when you can find people to do the things that you are procrastinating on, that you don't necessarily enjoy doing, or that are taking up a lot of your time when your time could be better spent elsewhere. All right, the next piece that he really talks about is the freedom of money. And remember, time creates money. So when we free up our time, so as I said to you before, by having my cleaners come in, they're saving me 5 hours, and 2.5 of those hours, 2 of those hours, I'm spending in my business in a sales capacity. And I'm making sure that I am, in those 2 hours, I am dedicated to doing my sales calls. I'm dedicated to doing my follow-up. I'm dedicated to doing my discovery calls with people. And what happens? That time that I've created allows more money to come into my business. So really thinking about that freedom of money, and when you free up some of those tasks that you should be doing. So even the social media, when I freed that task up, I knew that I would have more eyes on my business and I'd have more people seeing what I was doing. And that down the track, takes a bit of time, but that down the track is going to lead to more money in my business too. One of the big things that I think is really important here is committing to specific results. Now, my take on this piece is, I think it's really around being dedicated with what you're doing in the time that you're freeing up, and committing to those results. Because I think as humans, we are very good, and I think social media has helped us on this space. We're very good at wasting time. So my take here around being committed to specific results is making sure that if you're freeing up that 5 hours of time, that you commit to what you want to actually achieve in that period of time. One of the things, the next piece he talks about is, if you have enough money to solve a problem, you don't have a problem. I really like that. It's so true, right? Like, you think about, what problem you have in your business. So for example, I had a challenge in my business where, again, coming back to social media, there was a particular platform that I just wasn't using. And I knew that to really get some results from that platform, I needed to do something about it. But it's my procrastination space. I don't want to do it, but I have enough money to find someone who can solve that problem for me. So I've hired someone to help me to grow on that particular social media platform, because it's certainly not a space that I want to play in. But now I've got the freedom of time to make more money. When I've got a problem, I know I can pay for that problem to be solved. So I think it's a really important one to think about, what are some of the problems that you have in the business? And sometimes I like to reverse engineer it a bit too, where you go, right, what's the problem I have? So for me right now, and if anyone out there is a coach, I am looking for some more coaches who are trained by the Neuro Leadership Institute. And when you've got that problem that you need more coaches, if you've got enough money, I can throw money at it, right? I could go and find perhaps a recruitment agent who can help me to source and to find the right people. So I think it's a really great expansion piece, understanding that if you can figure out what the problem is in your business, if you've got enough money, you can then, you don't have a problem. You go and find someone who can help you to solve it. Freedom of relationship. This is really important. And I think that in this space, Dan Sullivan really talks about kind of that win-win-win, if you like, or that win-win scenario where you have really great relationships with people. And one of the first pieces he talks about is being a good who for others. So being a good who for others, when you think about it as a business owner, you are someone's who. And whether you sell a product or a service, you are someone's who. If I think about it in the service space, absolutely. Like whether you're an accountant or a lawyer or you're a pharmacist or you're a coach, you are someone's who. So how do you have a really great relationship and be a really great who for other people? And, there's so many things that can fall into this space. But one of the things that, in all of my readings, I'm reading some other pieces at the moment, but can just be starting to understand, what do your people want? What do your customers really want from you? And how can you be that really great who for other people? And I think, in this space of the book, it's really understanding that relationship and getting laser focused on what that win-win relationship looks like. He talks about avoiding the wrong who's as well. And I think we all have gone down this path where perhaps it's been a client who hasn't been the right who, or perhaps it's been an employee who hasn't been the right who for you. So I think just having some clarity around, when you're looking for customers, when you're looking for clients, when you're looking for employees, what are your parameters? What are the things that you are looking for? Do you want to have your values aligned? Is it I was talking to some customers the other day, and it was a vibe. We talk about, how do we know if they're the right person for us? It's a bit of a vibe that you get from people. And, talking about people's vibe and people's vibrational frequencies is so common these days. We can really pick someone very quickly if they're on the same kind of vibration as us, in terms of, are they positive? Are they negative? Are they forward thinkers? Are they dwelling in the past? Where are they coming from? Are they focused on all the problems, or are they focused on solutions? We can often pick that up quite quickly. And I think really leaning into your intuition around that, and really leaning into your intuition around, whether people are the right who for you, whether that's a customer or whether that's an employee. I think in this space, though, is having the courage to say no. So having the courage to recognize if someone's not right, to be able to say no. And I know that in business in the beginning, that's a really hard thing to do, because we want to work with everyone and we want that money to come on board. And I think perhaps truthfully in the very beginning, you're going to have to suck it up and learn, and you're going to figure that out yourself, because you will learn over time that the wrong people can actually bring everything down in the business. Unfortunately, the wrong people who don't, are not on the same page as you, can not only bring your vibration down, like your mood down, they can bring, increased challenges, changes your mind and your mindset as well. But it can also have a ripple effect through your business. So I think this is, an important one to really start to think about, who are the right people, and do you have the space and the courage to be able to say no when you recognize it's not the right person? Or, what if you've already started in that relationship and then you realize it's not right? How do you have that courageous conversation? How to be effective collaborators is the next piece that Dan Sullivan talks about here. And he uses, and I can't quite remember if it's right here or where it is in the book, but he uses something that he calls an impact filter. And if you download his book and have a listen to it, you get the free PDF of that impact filter. And it is brilliant. It's a really great way to summarize projects. So this is in a workspace, of course, where you're handing a project over to one of your who's, one of your employees or your contractors, whatever it might be. And it allows you to really clearly communicate the ins and outs of that project. So he goes through things, I don't have it in front of me, but he goes through what's the purpose of the project? What's the impact of the project on the business? What's the best case scenario if we if we do take action on this? What's the worst case scenario if we don't take action on this? And then there's a whole section there. It's great because it's all just in one page, but there's a whole section there on what is the success criteria, what needs to be true once this project is finished for it to be successful. And I really like it because it helps, I think I look at it in a neuroscience-y way too, but it helps people's brains to be clear on all the parameters that they might need. So some people need that certainty. Some people need the autonomy. And I think even in that autonomous space where you've been very direct and clear about the project, it allows space. And this is something I do with my autonomous employees, is that I will say, listen, here are the things that need to be true at the end, but you go and figure out how you're going to get there. You go and figure out how this is going to happen for you and how you're going to get it done. That's entirely up to you. So someone who's driven by autonomy is going to love that space, that they actually get to take charge of it. They understand, and so autonomy people also need some parameters. So you've given them the parameters that they need, and then they can go away and create the actions they need. Now, if there's someone who's driven by certainty and they like to know exactly what to do, and they like to have all of those steps, it's also a great way that you can perhaps work together on that success criteria and say, okay, well, so what do we feel like, what do you think that you need to do in this space? Let's get it all down on paper so you can go away and do this project, and then we can come back together and see where it lands, see where you need support and you need help. So that was an important piece. The last piece of the book is really around freedom of purpose. And I really hadn't thought about this, I think, in the expansive way that Dan encourages you to think. And the expansive way, the first piece here is stop competing and start collaborating. And what I loved about this is that it kind of ties into one of Simon Sinek's philosophies as well, around having worthy rivals and understanding that we don't have to compete. This is not about, who's the biggest and the best, and I'm better than you are and you're better than I am. This is about how can we come together and collectively expand our purpose, for whatever your purpose is and whatever my purpose is. How can we collectively expand on this when we work together? And the truth is, your who's will expand your vision and your purpose. So when you have the right people, they actually talk about it in Good to Great by, it's the next book I'm reading is Good to Great by Jim Collins. He talks about having the right people on the bus. And I think this ties in nicely to Dan's concepts here around who's expand your vision and your purpose. So when you have the right people on the bus who share your vision and your purpose, they will help that to expand. They will come up with ideas for you that are well beyond what you've even thought of. And what I love there is that as the business owner, as the lead of the organization, the weight of that journey of where you're going doesn't have to lie on your shoulders anymore. It can be a collective piece. It can be a collaboration with all of your team. So when you can hand that project over and, for example, I might say to my virtual assistant, look, I would love you to take charge of the podcast. And, what are your thoughts? How do you think we can get this out to more people? How do you think we can collaborate with more people? How could we be better at doing this? And when I allow her to take charge of that and she knows what my vision and my purpose is, it allows her to expand in a space that I might have thought this big, and she can think on a huge scale. So I really love this piece around that freedom of purpose, that when you've got the right who's, and that's your collaborators or your employees, whoever it might be, they will help you to expand your purpose. So very, very cool. So I absolutely loved the book. That is all of my takes on this book for you. But if you're interested, please go and obviously buy Dan Sullivan's book or download it. I love listening to books. And as I said, when you download it, you actually get that impact filter as well. You can download that as a PDF, which is really cool. And my question to you is, who's your next who? Who is your next who in the business? Now, if you like the podcast, please make sure you leave us a review, because leaving a review helps other people to also be able to find the podcast. And you just never know, you might inspire someone else to go out and do more of what they love, which would be amazing. I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.